continue our discussion on linear equations, and I want to talk to you about the three different forms of linear equations. And then we are going to create equations of lines given a point and a slope or given 2 points. The first equation that we've seen in the past is called standard form of a linear equation. Standard form is ax plus by is equal to c. And remember that we like to use this to find x and y intercepts. And then when we have those, we can easily graph our equation. Next is slope-intercept form that we've been discussing. Y equals mx plus b. We use this when we want to graph and start with our y-intercept and move with our slope. M is your slope, and b is your y-intercept. Finally is slope point or point slope form. Most of the time you'll hear it as point slope form. And that is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. This is the easiest form to start in so that you can then move over to standard form or slope-intercept form. Our m here is still the slope, and you're going to use a point that will be x1 and y1. So to start with, let's change an equation from point slope form to slope intercept form. Again, point slope is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1, and we're going to convert that into y equals mx plus b. There are two scenarios in which you can begin with this. You can either be given a point and a slope, or given 2 points. We're going to start with a point and a slope. Okay, so let's say we're given a point like 1, -2, and a slope of -4. Your first step is always to fill in point slope form. So in order to do that, I usually label my point x1 and y1, and then I'm going to fill in my full equation. So y minus my y1 value is -2 is equal to m, which is -4, times x minus 1. Remember, your x and your y, those are going to stay in your equation because we want to end up with y equals mx plus b. Y and x are always in that equation. We also know that two negatives together, a double negative, create a positive, so minus a -2 is really +2. Your second step is to distribute your slope. Distribute always means multiply, so we're going to take -4, and multiply it by the x to get -4x. And we're going to take -4 and multiply it by -1 to give us +4. Bring down your y plus 2, and that will take us into step 3, which is to add or subtract the number that is next to y. Since it is a +2, we have to subtract it, and whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So when you simplify, we'll end up with y equals -4x plus 2. This equation is now in slope-intercept form. We can do the very same thing with 2 points. However, we don't have a slope, so that's going to be our first step, is finding that slope. So let's make 2 points, 1, 7, and -3, 5. So when I set this up, we need to find slope first. And if you remember from the last unit, slope is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. We want to label our points x1, y1, x2, y2, and then substitute those into my formula. So here we're going to get 5 minus 7 divided by -3 minus 1. 5 minus 7 is -2. -3 minus 1 is -4. And always reduce your slope at the end. A negative over a negative is a positive, and 2 over 4 is 1/2. This is now my m value. From there, I'm going to follow the same steps as I did on the left-hand side. So step 2 is to fill in point slope form. Now, you don't have to use the x1 and the y1, you could use the x2 and the y2, but usually for simplicity, I like to stick with the same variables. So if we use 1, 7 as our point and 1/2 as our slope, this won't be too bad. Filling it in, we have y minus 7 is equal to 1/2 times x minus 1. Again, you could have used y minus 5 and x plus 3 down here. Next, we're going to distribute. So to distribute, I'm going to multiply 1/2 by x and get 1/2 x, and 1/2 times -1 and get -1/2. Bring down the y minus 7. Lastly, I'm adding 7 to the left and the right, so that is your fourth step. And you simplify and end up with y is equal to 1/2 x plus 6.5, or 6.5. So our last step here was to add or subtract. And either way you do this, whether you have 2 points or a point of slope, you should end up in slope-intercept form. Let's do one example together, and I'll show you how simple it can really be. Here I'm given in number 1 a point and a slope. So our first step is to fill in point slope form, which is y minus, and you label your x1 and your y1. Our y1 is a 2. Our slope is 4, and then we have x minus 1. Second step, distribute. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times -1 is -4. Bring down y minus 2. And your last step is to add or subtract the number next to y. So here I'm adding 2, giving me the result of y equals 4x minus 2. So same thing again with 2 points, however you have to calculate your slope first.